Hey there, Rene. It is awesome to have you on the podcast. I know, I was recently on your podcast. Awesome stuff. Great show. Folks, if you look up the Rene Masse podcast, he's got all kinds of great content there. Awesome interviews. And you can also check us out chatting over there. Today on this show, we're going to try to mix it up a little bit. And I want to ask Rene some questions. So before we dig in, I want to take a little bit of time. Rene, I want to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Rene? Where are you from? And, what is your entrepreneurial or investor shtick?
My shtick. I like that. I'm Rene Masse. I live and breathe in downtown Kingston. Been here for 30 years. Love it. Originally from Toronto, but I've made my niche in Kingston, and we do multifamily, student rentals, and duplexes in Kingston. And we're the full package. When we invest, we're the full package. We acquire, we renovate because we have our own staff, and we even take care of the property ourselves. So that's our stitch. That's what we do.
I love it. I love it. That is fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about this. You're in Kingston. You've got essentially like a full service sort of start to finish experience for investors. I'm going to guess that that's not only helpful for investors that are in town in Kingston, Ontario, but also for people that are looking to do a little bit of diversifying, right? Maybe they're in a market, and if I'm in GTA, I'm looking around going, that's a hard market to try to buy for cash flow unless you're going like super low, loan to value, right? So that's hard stuff. But then also on the other end is sometimes, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show and their number one job isn't necessarily real estate. Sometimes they're buying real estate as essentially an opportunity to grow their wealth, grow their passive income. But ultimately at the end of the day, really what they're looking for is for a way into the market. And it sounds like they don't have to do a whole lot of work in order to do that.
A lot of people we work with are from the GTA area. And Kingston, they like it because it's much cheaper. And overall, the rents are still on the high side. And there's tons of opportunities here. So we deal with a wide range of investors, but mostly from GTA who are looking to just get more bang for their buck.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's awesome. I want to dig in more on that with you there, Rene. But before we do, I want you to think back to your journey. We have people at various places along their journey. We have some folks who have reached out to us and they have very successful businesses. They have quite a bit of retained earnings that that they have in their corporations. And sometimes they reach out to us at that point to say, hey, what should I be doing here? What's the tax strategy? What's the investment strategy for some safety, but also exposure to markets, especially real estate? But then we have some other people that are also, maybe really early in the journey and just looking to get started. So go back into your old self. What moment pops into your mind as maybe like a pivotal moment in you wanting to get into this world? What for you went, you know what? I want to learn more about this. And it maybe at the time you didn't know you were going to go as deeply into it as you did, but like what pops out in your mind as sort of that moment that sort of shifted who you were as a person and as a professional?
Kyle, great question. I would say, here's the irony is that I'm on a invested teacher podcast. And as you may know, I think you know this, you remember this? I was a teacher. I was a teacher. Although I was a teacher for only 3 months. Like I went through teachers college and then I realized this wasn't for me. And I ran out of money and I taught and then I went back at it. So I've always been an entrepreneur. My side gig, when I ran out of money or I needed money quickly, I jumped into teaching or did other jobs just to get back into what I was running my own businesses. The pivotal moment, you're asking for a pivotal moment that occurred?
Yeah, and I guess you're kind of painting a picture there where, you feel it's almost like, or maybe here's a great question for you is like, what made you initially get into teaching? Was it like you already knew you were an entrepreneur, you were working along that journey, ran into a roadblock or a challenge, and then you thought, teaching, I'll go do that? Or like, were you thinking teaching and then you recognized, wait a second,
Yeah.
this just, I knew this all along. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I'm on the wrong
Well,
path.
I love learning. I think I love to learn, and I figured out a way of learning in university, and I could have stayed there. I mean, I stayed 7 years, which was more than I really should have, but I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed studying and learning. And what do you do when you enjoy studying and learning? As an extrovert, you teach. And I knew other people who were looking to go to teachers college as well. So I just jumped in. And what do you do, Kyle? What do you do with a French literature degree?
Mm,
You go to teachers college. That's all you
yep.
do with it. And as a male who speaks French, it's like gold. So it was very easy to get in. I wouldn't say easy, but it was very easy to get a job afterwards as well. But along the years of going to university, I was doing my own deal. I was cleaning windows, painting. I was running a business, which was only window cleaning and painting, but it it gave me the freedom, and that's where I picked up that entrepreneurial side of things, and I ran with it. Once I got out of university, I was like, the idea of getting a job was just beyond my comprehension, beyond my way of thinking. I just didn't want to do this, so I dwelled more into it. And as a contractor, moving from little things, minor things, to something bigger, I was actually helping investors invest in real estate by renovating their places. And I noticed what they were doing. They were buying close to the university. It wasn't complicated. So I said, I need to do the same thing here. And I scrounged around to get any type of money I could, and it was basically loan back to loan. It was basically 100% financing. I really didn't have much money to buy my first property, but once I did, I rent hacked. I made it work because I knew I
Mm,
believed in it. And then to back that up as well, my father did delve into real estate in the 80s in Toronto, and it did very well. I went to private school. We had family trips to Europe. We benefited immensely from real estate. So I already had the glimpse of it,
mm,
and I knew that this was my journey. In a way, I remember, I think it was first or second year university. I remember speaking to my landlord at the time, and I moved midway. I had problems with some housemates. They started smoking, so I said, I'm out of here. I moved in like November, and they were questioning the whole thing. But it was sketchy that I was moving mid November. So he demanded 8 months rent, and at the time, I gave him all my money. Basically, I felt like I gave him all my money.
hmm,
I went back to school and studied, but this individual, he took off to, I think it was Thailand, for 4 months. And I'm thinking, wait a sec, hearing him, I'm really working hard in university. And this guy who basically, I mean, he sure bought the house, looks good, nothing's wrong with it. He had staff to take care of anything. He takes off to Tahiti, or Thailand, I think it was. I told myself, I've got to do something like that. So that day, there was a pivotal moment that day. I remember being in bed and going, I know I'm going to be owning property. I know
mm,
it. I believe in it. How? I had no idea. No idea. But simply the belief was very, very important. And not only that, but I linked an emotion to it. I just could feel the freedom associated with it. And I was so big on freedom that the security couldn't care. If I had $100 in the bank, I felt secure. That's it. But I wanted the freedom. That
hmm.
was the big one. So that's what I ran after.
I've got this picture, and actually, even though you and I have met, we talked on your show, we had met back in 2020. We were
Yeah.
doing an investing program together. And, really at the time I had mentioned, and I'll say it again here for this audience to know, you were definitely in a place further down the road in terms of specifically your mindset, like
Okay.
that was something I noticed back then. And in a way, like, I don't think I had a respect for the mindset yet, because when it's not clear to you, like when you're not there, when you
Oh
haven't
yeah.
had an
Yes. Yes.
epiphany, you
Yes.
don't know,
Yeah.
like what, like I remembered you had a lot of the abundance mindset, all of those things going on. And I just remember at the time kind of going like, okay, like that's, that's good. But I wasn't cluing into it. And I have since done a lot of
Mm,
my own growing, and my
mm.
business partners as well. And, when you paint that picture, you had a glimpse, as you mentioned, from your experience. I didn't know this about you, so
I'm
you
giving it
saw what
all, Kyle. I'm
yeah, I
opening up
love it.
here.
Hey,
I'm
it's like,
opening up.
of course,
I'm
which is
feeling very
fantastic.
vulnerable here. Careful.
So, you're talking about, your experience. You then got into this place where you essentially, and then you saw it on, from another angle, right? So you saw it from your own landlord, and it was
Yeah.
almost like kind of beating you over the head saying like, hey,
It was
listen,
a reminder. It was definitely a reminder. But
yeah,
here's what I noticed with a lot of people, there's people who actually offer. I mean, a few people call me up and they go, "I want some coaching." That's how I got started into the coaching business as well. And I started realizing what they didn't know and how to kind of transmit that, because it is all about the mindset. How does one think in order to then create the life that you want? A lot of people focus on the how, and
yeah,
they're like, the moment they know how to do it, then they'll jump ship, then they'll do this. But it's really not about the how. It's about the why and the vision. I felt it was so important to figure out exactly what you're looking for and remind yourself on a regular basis where you're going with your life on a daily basis, because it's so easy, as you know, it's so easy to just work on autopilot.
mm-hmm, yeah,
Go to work Monday morning, Monday to Friday, then it's done. And then Friday comes around, and then you've got your time on the weekend for yourself, your family. Then Monday comes around again. I just didn't want that at all.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think the most important part for people to understand is they need to believe that it's possible, believe in themselves, because a lot of people I also speak to, financially, they can quit their job if they really wanted to, but they don't believe that they can actually generate income.
right,
That's the
right.
truth, but it's a hard pill to swallow.
Well, the angle I wanted to like
Yep.
really explicitly highlight as well is that, how often people will get this idea that they want to, whether it's opening a business, like, you just kind of reference this idea of maybe leaving their job and, becoming a full-time entrepreneur, whether it's a
Mhm.
full-time investor, whether it's even just getting in to the into the real estate market, let's say as an investor, or any type
Yep.
of other, asset class. A lot of times they'll call us and we'll get on calls, and
Mhm.
and they're all fantastic people, and they're like, yeah, like I want to do this stuff. But the part that I think a lot of people miss, and you help people to see here, is that the struggle that exists when you make that decision. And I really want to highlight this idea. Like, now you're in this world, you're an entrepreneur, you have a company, you have your own holdings, you're
Mhm.
assisting realtors, and you're also doing coaching. So you have quite a bit of a world going on over there. And I think if somebody was to just sort of meet you and not hear some of this story, where you had mentioned a couple times running out of money on this journey, you had
Yeah, yes.
mentioned house hacking,
Yes,
100%
definitely.
finance, like these
Definitely.
are all
There's
things
a
that
sacrifice. You need to put in
absolutely.
sacrifice and hard work and some commitment to it. If you don't if the hard work commitment is not there, and the belief, it doesn't matter. And what I also notice, people they want the freedom, but they also want the security. You got to lose a bit of security to get freedom.
Right.
You can't have it both
Or you have
ways.
to sacrifice more. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that for me is like the big, for me, a message that I hope folks that are listening to this
Mhm.
podcast. Now, we're kind of speaking to people that are early in their journey.
Yep.
There's also other people that have businesses, they have income, and they're just trying to figure out like, how, what do I do with it? So,
Mhm.
those folks are probably in a slightly different category. But for those who are just getting started, thinking about how badly you want something, as you mentioned, and then
Yep.
what, do you have the mindset and essentially the commitment to it? So
Yeah.
it's like when a child says, I want to be an astronaut, and a lot of people say, okay, good luck, or they want to be in the NHL. And what I
Well,
tell my kids is, hey, listen, if you want to do that, I just want to let you know that you're not on the right path.
yeah.
Because if you want to be in the NHL, guess what? You should be shooting a lot more pucks in the garage
Yeah.
if that's what
Yeah.
you really want. And it's okay if you don't
Good
really
point.
want
Yeah.
that, but
Mhm.
don't lie to yourself, and or don't trick yourself into thinking you really want something. Because when you really want something, and you really, really, really want something, you find ways to make it happen. And I'm hearing that in your story.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
I
You make
want to
sure
hear
exactly.
about you and your, like, what would you say? Like,
Uh,
I'm hearing one thing. I can make an assumption about
yeah,
your unique ability that you
yeah.
bring to the entrepreneurial world
Mhm.
or the investor space. Like, one, I'm going to
Mhm.
throw out there. I'm going to say that, vision and dedication, like that's
Vision,
definitely
definitely.
something that I would say
Also,
is
but
in your
also
ability.
writing it down. I think it's very important to write it down, or at
Mm,
least have pictures of, vision board. It seems a bit flaky, but it's so effective because you can see it in the morning, and you can. kind of trick your mind in believing that it's already there. Like what I tell coaching clients is I say, write it in the present tense. And the reason that's so important is because the mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is imaginary. So if you can imagine it so clearly with such emotion, you're going to gravitate towards there, to that space mentally, and things will come your way. And the harder you work, I'm sure Kyle, I'm sure you believe in this. The harder you work at certain things, you get luckier in a way. Some things come to your way, but you got to put the work in. But I find the belief is very important. The belief in what it is, and also the belief in oneself. And then there's a possibility of growing with it. I would say I was just very, very persistent as well. Like I just believed in it. And if you in the beginning it was more survival. Like I basically needed to survive on my own and make this gig of entrepreneurship, make it happen, make it work so that I can actually live properly. That was the struggle. And then once you get into survival, but once again, I quit a teaching job, and people thought I was drugged up because who quits a teaching job? You know, you got the benefits, you got the pension, you got summers off. They just didn't understand it, but I wasn't happy with the situation. So I made it work by grinding constantly at it. It's just grinding to make it work. And as you say, I did rent hack, and I even my first property, it was 100% financing. It was over loan, but I made it sure that I made it work, and I made sacrifices along the way. Not everyone has to do this journey of it, but I think as I get more into this, it's easy sell. Everyone's saying, yeah, buy this, buy that, it's passive investing, and you'll be fine. There's work to be done. Work is the only way to get success at, and to be successful, you need to be, it's kind of a byproduct of being uncomfortable.
Right.
So I find a lot of people here's the bottom line. A lot of people, they want to grow mentally, emotionally, financially, but they're not willing to be uncomfortable. Or if they're uncomfortable, then they retract to the things that weaken them. Alcohol. I mean, nothing wrong with drinking alcohol, but if it's done as a way of retracting when you're uncomfortable, you'll never grow. The deal is if you want growth, you've got to be uncomfortable and be comfortable with uncomfortable. How do you do that? It takes work and persistence to do so.
And, well, even like more so, like you're speaking to a very specific group of people who want, that active, I want to get into this game, I want to do that. But I also have conversations with people that I always say, like, you don't have to want that, like you could call someone like myself if they want to locally do a joint venture, or call Rene if you like that market and maybe you're in that area or you're not in that area, because he did do the work, right? And he's doing it. Now, are you going to get all the upside when you take that route? Of course you're not as an investor, but maybe that's the fit that you need and want, right? So for me, it's all about clarity of deciding like where are you? And I always say this idea of like, trying to hit for the fences. Everybody wants that. And it seems like a good idea, but the reality is there's a lot that goes into that, right? So it's like maybe you want to be the home run hitter, but you don't have to be either, and you can still do really well.
People in their 40s, they hit 40, 45, they realize, okay, I'm set in my job. I like it. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. They're not looking for entrepreneurship, but joint venture partners or ways of getting better returns on their money. It's suitable to work together, of course. And then there's people who, 20s, 30s, where they're saying, I can do this on myself. They don't realize all the amount of work that's involved with it. We've gone through the mistakes. We've gone through the efforts along with it. And it saves a lot of time and effort for our investors. There's one investor in mind who we did one. We bought a property, converted into duplex, easy stuff. We were done in like 2 months. And they're like, wow, that was easy. Sure, it makes it. We've been doing this for like 10 years, 10, 15 years. So of course it's easy. So what they do, they did it on their own, which is perfectly fine. It was a bit more challenging to learn along the way. It takes time and dedication to whatever you're going to do. Keep in mind, investing in real estate can be passive. It's done properly. But if you're actively involved in it, you're going to learn a lot from it. You're going to make mistakes. and some of the mistakes could be costly. Or you just partner up with other people who've already made the mistakes, and you sleep better at night, less stress, more time with family, more time to do things that you really enjoy doing.
Totally. And I think that's where, again, knowing yourself is so key, because, for a lot of people, I think there's this hesitation to do that. But also, when you think about a return, of course, if you do something by yourself, in the end, if it's done well and you don't make too many costly mistakes, I say too many because you're going to make mistakes, that's going to inevitably happen unless you are
True.
just super, super lucky, right?
That's how we learn mistakes.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
But here's the part that I think, we've been talking a lot on more recent episodes about this, is always really trying to analyze what else you must sacrifice for that upside return. And like you had mentioned sleepless nights, sure. But like, what about just time and effort and hours of your time? If that's where you want to go to learn those things, and you understand them and you're willing to do that work, then rock and roll. But for a lot of people, they just look on paper and go, well, if I do it myself, I'll get this return. And if I go with a partner like Rene or Kyle or whoever, I'm going to get this return. And this one's better. Well, on paper, absolutely,
it may
is
sound
way better.
but they're not seeing the whole picture on it.
Totally.
And what I've learned along the years, I could get people, I could scale them much, much faster. Like we could buy 3-4 properties in 1 year with one individual with the right funding, of course, and the right backing. People on their own couldn't do that, because you do your first one, it takes a lot longer. You got to get contractors. I'm also, bless their heart, they're doing it on themselves. Especially if you're in your 20s and 30s, it makes sense. But when you're 45 and you got 3 kids and you're working full-time gig, be reasonable. Be reasonable with it. It's going to cost you a lot more than it's going to cost you strain on the family. And really, why are we doing this in the first place? Is it just for another buck? It's for a better lifestyle with our family and our loved ones. So if you're robbing them that of now, and you've got kids as well, Kyle, I've got kids. We really only we have them until the age of 12, 13. After that, they'll spend more time with their friends. So precious time is from 0 to about 12. So I caution people going on their own if they've got young kids. I've seen it, and it just breaks my heart to see that they don't realize where the wealth really lies.
Right. Right. I've said it a number of times. I definitely would not be doing what I'm doing today had I started when the kids were just, coming into the world, right? Like I began this journey much earlier than that. I had lots of time on my hands. I will argue, it still caused strain on my relationship with my wife or fiance at the time, or girlfriend at the time. But together we worked through it. So I would just, kind of with your caution for those who are maybe have young children, is just make sure if you are doing it, that you are keenly aware and planning for it, which again means more work and more intentionality on your side to make sure that you don't forget. Because it's when you go in on something, if you're like me, I get excited. I'm a quick start and I'm a fact finder. So I could go down that rabbit hole and forget about everything else in the world, right? And that's obviously not a great place to be.
And if you're investing in real estate, it is a business. And what I find is any business, efficiency is done. If it's efficient, it's profitable. They go hand in hand. And I still have a contracting business. It's run by other people, but I'm still involved in a few things. I'm just surprised by people who buy property, they get a permit, and they haven't even started the renovations yet. Time is very expensive. It baffles me. And if they just worked with the right individuals, it would be done it'd be done much quicker, much more efficient, and more profitable in the end. They think it's profitable now, but they're not seeing the whole picture.
Right. It's interesting. And I want to reframe as well for, those who are listening, and then also for you as well, Rene, that this particular show, although we deal in real estate a lot, it's actually not necessarily a real estate focused show. So I want to talk a little more about entrepreneurship in general, because you are, and I would argue that pretty much all active real estate investors are entrepreneurs. It is a business. Like you have a business, and you've been doing some pretty amazing things there in order to create that lifestyle for yourself, that professional lifestyle, that lifestyle for your family. I'm wondering, like,
Yeah.
what sort of maybe business hacks or, like, I'm always thinking about that entrepreneur who's listening, whether they're early in their journey or maybe they're well along their journey. Like, what would you
Mm.
say is like the biggest business hack that has maybe helped you along in your journey?
A business hack. Yeah, business and personal go hand in hand with me. Anything business is personal, personal business. It's hard to say. Honestly, the skill that I've developed over 14 years is probably meditation.
Ooh, I
There,
like that. I
and
was going to
yeah, yeah,
say
yeah,
to you when you said personal, I'm
yeah,
like, I think you're talking mindset,
yeah,
but I think mindset is
yeah.
so key
And
to running a successful business. So keep going. I want to hear
I
more
find
about what you
the
mean.
reason that's so important is because I find that it's but if you look at Titans, there's a book about Titans. It's very successful individuals. 80% of these people meditate one way or another, and I think it's very powerful because that way you have a lot more control over the mind. And what I notice over many years of meditating is just you're able to refocus and choose what you want to think about. And so, for example, something happens on the job site or some investment or some tenant problem, or there's always problems with real estate, anything that happens. You can lose a lot of stress and anxiety over what's happening, and it's not worth it. A lot of it is going to pass. A lot of it can easily be resolved, but it all depends. I find any business individual to get to a certain level, you need to be able to control the mind or observe your thoughts and be able to choose what you want to think about. Not ignore the negative, but deal
Hmm.
with what it is and accept things as they are, deal with it and move on. And
Hmm.
I find the meditation has helped immensely and just be able to control, focus, and deal with such a situation and move on with it and not be reactive, respond properly, and you deal with it and move on with it, or let it pass. I mean,
Hmm.
there's always going to be issues, problems, either in business or in personal life. Deal with it properly, but really deal with the problem. And a lot of people avoid it. It's the human condition to avoid a problem, or delve into buying a car. There's relationship problems. You buy a car. It's
Yeah.
just, or there's something wrong. You watch TV or something, or you divert the mind to something else, or you eat more food or something. That there's little things, but um, if you're able to focus and accept the situation and just observe in a way, observe the problem,
Hmm.
far better off.
That is to me, you know, that is a massive business hack because first of all, your personal life creeps in. It really
It
limits
does.
or promotes your business or professional life for sure, regardless of even if you're an entrepreneur working a golden handcuff job like teaching or like whatever it is. The reality, like what you've just highlighted, and I think
You're
you've helped me think about it differently, is
I
that
would
it's so
say
key.
I would say what to add to simplify it all, I would say your level of success is dependent on how well
Mm,
you can handle stress, how much stress you can handle, and how well you can deal with it. That determines your level of success.
I I 100% agree with that. And the reality is when we find ourselves, and I've got the listeners in mind, those who are running
Mhm.
businesses, be it in investment, real estate, or maybe they're running a different business. Maybe we know we have a lot of realtors listening. We also have a lot of founders of companies that are
Mhm.
running these large companies. And the reality is that oftentimes where people get stuck is they start trying to do a little bit of everything.
Yep.
And to me, when you do those things, what that means is that, first of all, you're talking about stress. You're probably stressed. There's
Yep.
probably lots too much on your plate. And you haven't taken that time to be intentional about what really matters here.
Mhm.
And like, what do I need to do next? What do I need to deal with, like you said, and
Yep.
and deal with it to get it
It,
out of the way, get that negativity out of here, and
yes.
where like what doesn't actually matter,
Yeah.
right? And I think you've kind of tied that back nicely towards this idea of meditation and mindfulness, that type of experience. You hear so many people in business talking about these things, and I would
And
argue
it's
that
it's
it's not just for business people; it's for everyone, right?
precisely for everybody because you could be a teacher and something happens at school. How many people bring it home, and then you're not present with the kids or your spouse, and you're robbing yourself in a way.
Hmm.
So it provides a lot more being present at the moment, and also clarity on what matters most to you, your loved ones, and your community.
I love it. I love it. That's so well said. And I think a massive takeaway, regardless of who is listening and where they are in their world and in their entrepreneurial
I'm
journey.
giving it all, Kyle.
I
I
love it.
did not
I
hold
love it.
back.
There's no holding back here.
You don't want me to hold back. There it is.
There it
There's
is.
there's my superpower and the secret to the success I've achieved.
Something that I've been asking Rene
Yeah.
more often, and I'm going to continue asking this because I find it very interesting, is this idea of many entrepreneurs, many investors have corporate structures, okay? And one of those reasons why, of course, liability is there to protect themselves, let's say, from, a slip and fall on one of the rental properties. There's that aspect there.
Yep.
But on the other hand, there's also this, tax implication aspect. And I'm wondering, for you personally, I say personally, but really it's professionally, and your corporate structure, I guess, what would be, if you off the cuff had to say, like, what's your favorite part about having a corporate structure of any type when it comes to what it offers you in terms of, the financial benefit or tax savings?
One word is deductions. It's all about deductions. Everything is deductible. So there's a reason why we still do our own property management, because it's a liability company, it's an active company, and it has employees. So you're taxed differently, much, much lower, as you know. So we're able to say, for example, a property is generating too much cash flow, which is really good, really nice. But it would be tacked on to line 150 on their taxes, and then it would bump up their income, and then their tax at that potentially 52%. That seems really silly. Then that way, for every dollar, you're getting really $50 out of it. So what we do is we do our taxes and our investors' taxes. We do the taxes for the property each and every month, so we know the income and the expenses. So every month we see if properties is generating a lot of income. What do? We tack on some deductions onto it. We throw on more property management onto it. We increase the property management company. There's so many ways of going about it. But if one is doing their taxes and they're looking at taxes once a year, you've lost the battle with taxes. You need to do it on a regular basis. We even brought our bookkeeper in-house just to get it done properly, so we can see where it's going, and then we can divert certain things, and then basically pay as little taxes as possible. Because in the end, it's not how much you gain, it's how much you keep.
Awesome. That's great. We'll call it hack. I think a lot of people with corporate structures are going to go, yeah, that is true. But I think your method there of being more intentional about it and staying on top of it is such an important piece. And this is not an insult to those who are, accountants or bookkeepers out there, but if you as the business owner are not sort of advocating for that to happen, it might not happen on its own, right? So I'm going to guess that you've been very intentional about saying, this is how we're going to do things. We have the opportunity here if we're intentional, but if we just leave it and hope and pray that somebody else is thinking the way we are, it's probably not happening.
I've been in business for 30 years. So there were points where it was a mess. Getting any paperwork was just a mess. Getting to know how much money I was making a month or a year, I had no idea. So I've been to the situation where it was challenging to get any paperwork, and I think the bookkeeping and the orderly is very important.
Awesome. Fantastic. And, we're wrapping up here. One thing I always like to ask entrepreneurs, investors of all type is, there's this thing that people think about us. Okay. Like I'm talking about no one listening to this show. So we're all a group here. Yeah. But, when you talk to, we'll call it the outsider, the non-business owner, the non-active investor, they look at us as being really risky. Like we are not risk adverse, right? Now, my wonder is, now I'm going to be honest. I open it up and I tell people all the time that for a very long time, I think I may have been maybe left myself overexposed in some areas. I
Mhm.
always am curious, what would you say is sort of like your, what would be like a safety net thing that you have in place? Is a tool, a strategy, a something that, maybe you may not have had in the early years, especially when you were like,
Hmm.
100% financing, just trying to get off the
Yeah.
ground. But now that things are rolling, what would you say is like a safety net thing that you have or that you put in place? Or maybe it's something that you plan to put in place but haven't gotten around to yet. That kind of, I guess, not to say it's going to completely reduce all of that risk, but
Yeah.
ultimately will be there for you if, let's say, something unexpected happens.
Ah, I mean, I enjoy risk. I enjoy being in a situation, but I wouldn't say I love putting myself in a risky situation. I'm smart about it. I'll analyze it, look into it. Bottom line, I think it's more an illusion. The idea of risk is really what I mean. There's a thousand reasons why things are not going to work out. If you focus on the negative, yeah, you're going to get more negative. Focus on the positive, you get more positive. I mean, having access to liquidity is also very important. But I don't have anything specifically in place. What I at this point in my life, I'm more focused on what's in between my head. That is really what I'm able to control, and I feel as if I have a lot more power in that side of things, of observing thoughts. Then I can choose where to put my energy, and I really believe where I put my energy will grow. Uh, in the end, if I lose everything, I know I can build everything up. What are the chances of losing everything are very, very slim.
Yeah.
But sure, I would say typically, save up, make sure you don't spend too much, have a bit of money on the side. Those are typical things. But once again, I'm more of a philosopher. I really believe that this whole idea of money is an illusion. It's a tool. It's
Mm-hmm.
really a tool to get what you want. And what really matters is time, freedom, spending time with your loved ones, and enjoying life. Because as you know, Kyle, my friend, it's very, very short.
It,
It
it,
goes fast.
it definitely is. And, you
Goes
made me
fast.
think here through this conversation that we have an episode, and I'll put it in the show notes for everyone. One of the episodes we talked about, the title of it is, is your definition of risk wrong? And I think something I heard you
Mm,
say, implicit, maybe not explicitly, was
yeah.
this idea that the things that you're doing are actually inherently less risky for you because you actually are very knowledgeable. You have an expertise in that area. And I would
Mm,
100% agree with that.
yeah.
Something we're trying to advocate more for those who are listening on this show is, finding easy ways to kind of throw in that safety net, So for example, something I never had while I was scaling up was, critical illness. So that's something that,
Mm,
I've put in place more
yep.
recently. And the beauty is when it's designed well by someone who's, entrepreneurial or investor minded like we are,
Hmm.
you can do it where, there's return of premium options where
Yeah.
essentially it acts kind of like a savings account
Yeah. Yeah.
that,
Or I would say invest in mortgages.
yep.
That's fixed. It's a fixed return, and you have a lot of rights, as many rights as the bank, which has more power than individuals. So yeah, invest in mortgages, which is a fixed return,
I love it.
and it's secured to real estate, and as long as the loan to value is very low, it's relatively safe.
Fantastic. Yeah, no,
But
that's a great one as
diversifying as
well.
well. Yeah.
Diversifying and
Yeah.
kind of like the way I look at mortgages as well, if you own rental property, for example, or real estate, is that you're kind of playing the other side. You're playing
Yeah.
the other side because now it's like, hey, if things don't go well, you're on the other side of the coin
Yeah.
instead of, everybody who thinks real estate's gonna,
And,
go to the
and
moon every
so
single year.
here's one thing I would like to add is 100 years ago, what was the powerful elements of our society? It was the churches. You see all the steeples, all the churches were the highest buildings. What's the highest building now? It's the banks.
Mm.
Where do they invest? They invest in mortgages.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
follow what the bank's doing. Follow what works. And the bank's not going to ever tell you to invest in mortgages because that's their stick. That's what they want to do. That's what they provide everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They'll give you a
With
mutual
enough
fund.
safety there if
Yeah,
things
yeah.
don't go so well, right?
But
So
I'd say 60 to 70% of their income derives from mortgages. That's why they're so constantly competitive with each other. So just do what other wealthy individuals are doing. Go where the money's going.
Yeah, and not to mention the bank doesn't even have to use their own money; they get to use our
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
They
exactly,
take somebody else's
Yeah,
money, give you less, and then
it's a brilliant skill, and
absolutely.
it's I find sometimes it's like a veil. Recently, I saw Wizard of Oz. It's just a white guy behind a curtain who's just you know it's a bit of an illusion. They tell us all this stuff, and in the end, there's a reality behind, and it's just a white guy behind the curtain, kind of controlling all of it.
I love it. I love it. Listen, Rene, I told you at the beginning before
Yeah.
we hit record, I was going to try hard to keep it under 30 minutes. I
It's okay.
failed as I typically
No,
do.
I'm good
Hopefully,
till
though,
12.
what I can say, though, is people who are listening are definitely enjoying the
Yeah.
conversation. So I thank you for
Yeah.
your time. Before we wrap up here, I want to know what, if there was one thing, one takeaway
Yep.
that you're hoping those who are listening will take from this conversation. Only one thing. What's that big takeaway or that
One
big
thing
idea?
is write down what matters most. Write down your values and write down what you want to, how you want to live the life you want to live in the next 18 months, and write it down, look at it on a regular basis, and base those values on what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be investing as well.
I love that. That's a great takeaway there, friends. Friends, if you've been listening to more, if this is not your first episode, I have a funny feeling you're going, you know what? Rene's saying it too. Because guess what? We need to understand what we really want out of this thing we call life. And that's different for everyone. There's no right, there's no wrong, but there's some strategies that are pretty consistent. I heard a lot of great strategies here today from Rene, so I want to thank you for that. And friends, if you want to learn more about Rene, he's got a podcast. Rene, tell them about the podcast, and also where can they learn more about you if they want to hear about investing in Kingston, if they want to hear about coaching, tell them all about the goods.
Rene Masse. Just Google my name. Everything shows up on Facebook, Instagram, and all my websites are on there. And I'm a realtor in Kingston. We do property management in Kingston as well. We do renovations in Kingston, different company. And because I really do enjoy helping others, I coach people as well.
Awesome. That's fantastic, Rene. It's been awesome to get to catch up with you again. Folks, let us know if you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to leave a little bit of your big takeaway by leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rene, thanks for your time, and looking forward to catching up with you real soon.
Thank you, Kyle. You're a very good presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. Chat soon.